This week on the Autocar Show, we travel to Oxford to take a look at the Mini that's headed India's way. And of course, the comparison that you've all been waiting for, the Alto versus the Eon. Hormuz, of course, brings you all the gossip and what you can expect in Auto Expo. Well, I'm here in the heartland of Mini in Oxford. Now, this little car, when it originated in 1959, was quite a pathbreaker with front-wheel drive, transverse engine, and its compact dimensions. Ever since then, it's gone on to become an icon across the world. Well, it's all set to make its debut in India next year, and that's why we're here to take a look at the Mini plant, which is pretty interesting because they say in a single year, it's really difficult to get two identical Minis off the line because the permutations and combinations that you can have of interiors and exteriors is just too many. Well, we're also going to take a short test drive, so what are we waiting for? Let's go. People who build Minis are as fun as these cars are, and the attitude and energy carries right across the brand. The guys who build these cars are probably the ones most passionate about them. The Mini has a production triangle with the engines being put together at Hams Hall, the stamping and press and sub-assembly of the body is done at Swindon, and once this body is thoroughly checked, it's shipped off to the Oxford plant where I was. The engine, the body and all the rest come together here. The Oxford plant, for most part, is automated, with robotic arms that look like they're from the movie Transformers, working at a frenetic pace, spot welding and assembling the body. Once the body is entirely ready, it winds its way to the paint shop, where it goes through various processes of rigorous cleansing before it gets its base coat. The base coat is electrically charged in the paint stage, so what's necessary sticks to the body and the excess washes off. At each stage, a dryer is used to ensure that no water stays on, as this is what causes bubbles in the paint process. The inside of the car gets hand-coated, and if you look closely, the fuel filler lid is attached to the window to ensure that all the edges get cleanly painted. Then the robotic arms come into play again to paint the rest of the car. The fingers set off an electrical charge into the air around the paint to ensure it gets attracted to the metallic parts and wastage is minimal. The Mini is known for having separate body colors and roof colors, and that all happens here. But the designs that one often sees are all aftermarket staged, like the striping or the flags on the roofs. Once the car is painted, it goes on to the assembly hall. The doors come off and go to a separate area for their assembly, and the rest of the car goes on to get the suspension, the electrical harnesses, the interior, and the engine put in. The wheels come on, and then the same doors meet their correct cars right at the end of the assembly line. Once complete, a rigorous quality check is done again, and the cars drive off the line finally. We took the Cooper S hatch and the Countryman out of the plant for a ride. The hatch and the Countryman will both be available in India. The Cooper hatch gets the engine that BMW have developed in a joint venture with Peugeot Citroën, and it is a 1.6-litre petrol that churns out 118 bhp, which feels a little underpowered. But the Cooper S that I was driving gets its additional power from a turbocharger and puts out a much larger 173 bhp, which is what makes it masses of fun. So we've got a short stint in a couple of the cars. I've got the Cooper S with me first. It's a very peppy little engine. Put your foot down, there's power almost anywhere through the range, pretty quick. Just doesn't feel like a small car at all. And yet this engine is very, very drivable. I can put it into third gear, really slow down, amble around, put my foot down again, gets going. So will be pretty easy to drive in traffic as well. Despite this, it was the Countryman that, though bigger and heavier with its four-wheel drive, an identical engine felt a little more powerful. It gave you the stronger shove off the line when you put your foot down. It does get about 8 bhp more, but it feels much stronger. However, it just doesn't do all that power any justice because the setup is soft and the Countryman feels all over the road. The steering is overly light and tends to follow the road, which makes it a little disconcerting. The rear feels bumpy and bouncy, and you just can't get yourself to push this car around. In stark contrast, the Cooper hatch feels together with a much stiffer setup, and it's the car that you really want to chuck around the corners. The Cooper S hatch really puts a smile on your face, and you just want to go on and on driving this little machine. It's masses and masses of fun.
The handling of the Cooper is really amazing. You know, the steering is sharp, it's direct, it's almost go-kart-like, changes directions with amazing agility. And in some respects, this just doesn't feel like a small car as far as the handling goes. And in other respects, it feels compact because you can nip in and out of traffic and tuck yourself into any little corner to park in.
The stiff setup is a little bit of a pain when it comes to ride quality because you feel just about every dimple on the road. And in India, that's only going to be amplified tenfold with the conditions of our roads. In this respect, the Countryman would probably offer up the better ride, but mostly at low speeds. Still, when you're behind the wheel and inside the Cooper hatch, it gives you a feeling that makes you forget all the negatives and you begin to fall in love. The Cooper hatch is definitely tight on space on the inside, and it's a car that's really meant more for 2 than 4. Though there is a rear seat, it's a very tight squeeze. The Countryman is the more practical one, especially for the Indian market, with 4 doors, a larger rear seat and more boot space. That's all on the inside. On the outside, it's the little Cooper hatch that charms you more. The Cooper hatch is the smarter car, and it makes you fall in love quite instantly. Some people feel that Mini has lost its heritage along the way, but I think it's all still there in the Cooper hatch. You can't help but turn around and look at one of these when it passes you. The Countryman is the one that's really moved away from the roots, and this is the one that I did not like too much. Yes, probably more practical for India, but still, how practical are we when we fall in love?
So it's been a very short stint with these 2 cars, and of course I'd like to drive them in our Indian traffic conditions and on our roads to be able to tell a little bit more about them. But my first opinion on these 2 cars, the Countryman possibly the more practical option for the Indian market with the boot space and the bigger back seat, but still it just didn't feel like the Cooper. The original hatch, it's sharp, it's direct, it's nimble, it's agile, it's compact, and there's something to it. It has a character. That's why it was such an iconic car and still is, and it is the one that stole my heart.
Stay tuned right after this break, the big comparison of the small cars, the Eon versus the Alto.